All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Ag Progress Days. Thank you for joining us here and also online if you're watching live. My name is Amber Denmon, and I am a registered dietitian and extension educator based in Sullivan County, Pennsylvania, so way up in the northeast part of the state. I'm so excited to be here with you today, and I'm even more excited to show you this very quick and easy recipe, the Mediterranean chickpea salad recipe. So before we get started, we always want to make sure that we start with a clean countertop, clean space, which my colleague already did that for me before everyone got here. So we had a clean space. I washed my hands. When you're washing your hands, you want to make sure you scrub for 20 seconds. If you don't know what 20 seconds is, sing happy birthday 2 times through. It's a great way to know that you've washed your hands completely. Also, when you're washing your hands, there's some areas that we miss often. So our thumbs, when you're rubbing, you want to make sure you get your thumbs in between your fingers. In the wintertime, when you get dry skin, take a little bit more time to scrub. So on all of our recipes, we do have our food safety steps, and I love it because we even include information on how to make sure our produce is safe. So whether we should rub, scrub, rinse our different vegetables. So I've already went ahead and did all of that today to these vegetables. So for example, this recipe we're making says wash whole fresh produce by rinsing parsley and gently rubbing cucumbers, bell peppers, onions, and lemon. So it tells you exactly what we need to do. So now let's get into the ingredients for this recipe. This is a perfect recipe for this time of year, especially if you have a garden at home. Maybe your cucumbers are overflowing or your peppers are starting. This is a perfect recipe, and it doesn't require you to heat up the kitchen. So it's a no-cook recipe that's really delicious. The first ingredient you'll notice is 3 cups of cooked chickpeas. I am a lazy cook, so I did the canned option of chickpeas. So it would be 2 15-ounce cans of chickpeas. I've already rinsed them. And you want to look for low sodium options or no salt added, and then you'd rinse them. And a general rule of thumb for any beans, like our chickpeas, is you rinse them until you no longer see bubbles, and then you know that you've rinsed them enough. So that's what I did earlier this morning for these 2 cans of chickpeas. The next ingredient that we have here on the list is a medium cucumber chopped. Now, I don't consider this medium. This is a huge cucumber, so I'm not going to use all of this. And I do want to share some knife safety tips with you. So the very first thing, before I even start cutting, you want to make sure that your cutting board is secure. Now, Nicole has lovely boards here for us today that have plastic on the ends of them or rubber, and so they don't move around. If your cutting board moves around at home, all you have to do is you take a damp paper towel, stick it under your cutting board, and that prevents it from moving. So it's much safer than flipping around and moving around on you. So my cutting board's secure. The next thing is find a knife that you enjoy working with and you feel comfortable working with. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to chop down what I think's a medium cucumber. We'll save that for later, snack on. The next thing I want to talk about is a bear claw. When we are cutting, we want to make sure that we are protecting our fingertips. Because if your hand is flat and you're cutting, if the knife slips, you could cut your fingertip. Compared to if you're using a bear claw, you're resting that knife along your knuckles and you're protecting your fingertips. So very important to do when you're cutting. I'm not a chef by any means, but these little tips help you a lot in the kitchen. So I'm going to go ahead and chop off the end of that cucumber. Another tip is you want to have a flat surface to work with. So this lemon's a good example. It rolls around, making it difficult to cut. And so by cutting this cucumber in half, I have a flat surface to work with. Once again, much safer than if it was roly-poly on me. The next thing I'm going to do is this recipe is calling for chopped cucumbers. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut this in half here and maybe one more. I find that the smaller the pieces of cucumber, the nicer the salad turns out. And I'm just going to chop them in uniform pieces, keeping my bear claw. And I did use an English cucumber today. I just like the way that they chop up for a salad. They have smaller seeds in them. I'll go ahead and add those. I like to add as I go, clearing off my cutting board so I have lots of space. You'll see how beautiful this recipe comes together and how colorful it is. Make a few little strips here. Cut the rest of our cucumber. On all of our recipes, we also include the nutrition information. So we tell you how many servings are in the recipe, what the serving size is, and then all the nutrition information as well. So great if you are looking for something high in fiber, high in protein. This is going to check those boxes because of our chickpeas in there. You wouldn't even have to serve a meat with it, although I do smell something grilling, and that would be delicious with this recipe too, but you could eat it as is. The next ingredient is a bell pepper. It's your choice of color. You could use green, yellow, orange, whatever you prefer. I thought red would look really pretty in here, so that's what I'm going to do. And it calls for the whole thing, so I'm going to just roughly cut the edges off. I don't think there's any right or wrong way to cut a pepper. A lot of people do it different ways. I'm just going to cut the cheeks off, set that aside, and then I'm going to do little strips. Any cut we make starts with strips. Keeping those bear claw. If you grow vegetables at home, this is a great recipe, like I already said, to try and a way to use up all those vegetables that are coming in season. That over there. I think that the red, orange, and yellow green peppers do offer almost a little bit sweeter taste than the green bell peppers. So that's something to think about too. And if you do have a garden and you like this recipe, you could always plant ingredients for that recipe. That's something I do at home is, we use a lot of kale throughout the winter, and that's what I like to plant. And my husband loves to plant it and go crazy with it. So I'm going to go ahead and add these to the bowl. Once again, look how beautiful that is. All those colors coming together. I think we eat with our eyes. All right, the next one is a half of a red onion. So I just learned this trick recently. You want to keep the end. So if you think about how our plant grows, so this is the root end. The roots would be down here if this was in our garden, and then the green leaves would be up the top. So that's the root end. I want you to keep that root end on when you're cutting it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut right down through it, leaving the root end on. And what that does is it kind of keeps the onion together so it's easier to work with. I watched one of my colleagues do this recently, and now I share it with everyone. I'm like, oh my goodness, it was like life-changing for me. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make little slits this way, little cuts, and then I'm going to go this way, almost like a grid. And then the pieces just fall off very uniformly. So I'm going to go ahead and chop down here. And we are using a red onion today. The recipe calls for red onion. The red onion is a little bit milder in taste. It's not going to make me cry up here in front of you all. And it's beautiful. It adds another pop of color. So you could either make cuts this way and then this way, and you can also do layers. I only recommend doing the layers if you're comfortable with a knife and you have practice. I'm just going to go up and down today so I don't end up cutting a finger. You could also just slice your onion because it does call for a slice. Once again, I like to have little bite-sized pieces. So that's why I'm going a little bit smaller on this recipe. I'm going to set these off to the side. And then they really blend up in the recipe. Okay. If you're making a double batch, you could use that whole onion. And this is a wonderful salad to take to summer picnics, family gatherings. I guarantee no one else will have it. Okay, moving right down the list. Our next ingredient, God bless you, is a 1/3 cup of olives, Kalamata olives. You'll notice that there's no salt in this recipe, and these olives really give the recipe a little kick. And even if you don't like olives, because I usually get that with this recipe, well, I don't like olives, so I'm not going to try it. But I'm going to chop them very small so they'll really blend in, and they're almost providing another layer of flavor to what we've already started here in the base of the recipe. So since olives are such a love-hate relationship food, if you're making this, really chop them down so someone won't see the big chunk of one in there and know it's in there. So I'm just going to chop, chop, chop till I get it finely cut up. And you'll notice this will add yet another pop of color to our recipe and a little zing to it. Chop, chop, chop. Raise your hand here in the audience, and you can tell us online too. How many olive lovers do I have in the audience today? Do we like olives? Okay. Awesome. I see little ones in the back. I love that. Raising your hands. Okay. It also calls for a half a cup of feta cheese, so I'm going to go ahead and add that in now. Next, we're going to work on our dressing. Making your own dressings at home is so easy, quick, and it's fun to do because you can really control what you're putting into it and the flavors that you have. So we're going to use an extra virgin olive oil today. I do recommend for this trying an extra virgin olive oil because you do want that flavor of the olive oil to come through since it's more of a saladish dressing. So I already have that measured out. It's a 1/4 cup. I'm also going to add in 2 tablespoons of white wine vinegar. And really, if you don't have white wine vinegar, or maybe you don't use white wine vinegar, you could use any vinegar. We have a few white balsamics at home that would be delicious in this recipe. So don't worry if you don't have it. You can use something else, a different vinegar that you have. The next ingredient is a tablespoon of lemon juice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll out my lemon. This just helps to kind of release the juice, the little, I don't even know what they're called, the little, little fruit sacks in there. I'm going to go ahead and cut this in half, and I'm going to juice it into my cup. We only need a tablespoon. You could also use bottled lemon juice if you had that. I thought it would be nice to use fresh. Just going to squeeze this right in here. If you have young ones at home, I know my son loves to help with juicing lemons and mincing garlic with my garlic press. So involve them with this process. So 1 tablespoon, that's about 1 tablespoon. We're going to measure it out, make sure I don't get any seeds in there. The next ingredient is also a tablespoon of fresh parsley. I do not have fresh parsley, but what I wanted to use is dried parsley because I had that on hand. Now, a rule of thumb for going from fresh to dried is I always got to make sure I get this right, a 3-to-1 ratio. So since it calls for 1 tablespoon of fresh, there's 3 teaspoons in a tablespoon. So I'm only going to use 1 teaspoon of dried because dried is much more potent, strong than fresh herbs. So if you're making a conversion at home, and you're using dried for fresh, you always use less of the dried. So I'm going to go ahead and add that teaspoon of parsley into my dressing. Also calls for a 1/4 teaspoon of red pepper flakes, just a little bit to let us know that it's there, not too much. If you absolutely cannot stand heat, you could always omit that and not add it in. And then ground pepper to taste. So I'm going to add just a little bit of ground pepper, adding to the flavor that we already have in the dish. Now, this is really fun. Young ones here in the crowd, this is what you could do at home. You could help measure out and then shake the bottle. Shake, 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 shake until all your ingredients are mixed up. You want to test your lid first to make sure that doesn't go everywhere. But shake all those ingredients up and look how quickly I made a salad dressing. Within a few seconds, it came together. If I wasn't talking, it would have been a few seconds. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add this over my salad. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to toss this a little bit. If you were making this at home, you have 2 options. You could wait and put the dressing on right before you served, or you could kind of let those flavors marinate and allow that to sit for a few hours. So it's completely up to you. If you let it marinate, it might soak up the dressing. You might need a little bit more. So it's really, you can test it both ways and see what you like doing better. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pour that dressing on top. Look how easy that was. I didn't have to heat up my kitchen, quickly came together, and this would go great on its own, or you could have it with, a grilled chicken breast, some fish. It's such a versatile dish, and it really, really is delicious, as those of you that are here will see when you try it. So thank you so much for joining us today, and I hope you try the Mediterranean chickpea salad recipe.